start the video by teaching chapter 1, the subject of psychology. So this video is for ISC Class 11 students, which will be the 2026-27 batch. So we'll be covering the important topics and everything related to this chapter. So without wasting much time, let's get started. So in today's chapter, we'll be covering the chapter number 1, which is the subject of psychology. So you can see the syllabus for chapter 1. So this is your official syllabus from the ISC website. So if you will comment down, I will also share the PDF, but this is the same syllabus which I have downloaded. So you can even take a screenshot and note this down. This is really important. All that what we all have to do, we'll be covering from this chapter really closely, because board awards marks on basis of the syllabus. So make sure you just underline all the important topics and whatnot from the syllabus. So make sure you note this down. So this video will be divided into 3 parts. So like for the syllabus, I also recommend you to do this chapter into 3 parts. So in today's video, we'll be covering part 1 of chapter number 1, the subject of psychology. These are the 9 portions or the parts which we're going to do in today's video, these 9 portions. So the first topic, definition of psychology, you can even refer to the syllabus. So what is psychology exactly? Psychology is the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. So basically it helps to understand how people think, feel and act. So by this we understand that psychology aims to understand and explain the complex human behaviors and experiences through empirical research and theoretical frameworks. So there are some keywords which you need to do. First of all is behavior. So behavior refers to observable actions, whereas stimulus, it refers to external or internal events. And then we have response. So I'm not concentrating on these keywords right now, because in the next topic, we'll be doing the definitions of these in detail. Because if you refer to the syllabus again, the council wants you to do these definitions in details. Before moving on, I need you to remember that psychology studies both the observable actions and the internal experiences. So this is something which you really need to keep in mind, because as you know that from the past 5 to 6 years, the council actually wants you to understand psychology rather than just learning it. So this is something really important when we talk about the critical analysis questions, because students often forget that psychology is not just about what you see, the observable actions, the behavior. It is about the internal experiences as well. So in the next slide, we're going to do the important terms. First of all is behavior. So what is behavior exactly? Behavior refers to the observable actions which we can see and the reactions of individuals in response to external or internal stimuli. This includes everything from physical actions to verbal responses, as well as non-verbal cues. So what I would like to highlight over here is that you don't need to go very in depth of each and every topic. This is the basic reason I actually made this channel and I started sharing notes, because when I was in class 11 I struggled a lot, because right now you don't have like a particular book which actually gives you all the content you're required to do for class 11, especially for the first chapter. So I have prepared in detail notes, PDFs and everything. So I'll be commenting my email down below. If you want, you can contact me and you'll get these notes delivered at your doorsteps. So these are in detail book type notes which you'll be getting. And basically why I recommend students to get these is that you basically get a book where you know that how much you're required to do for class 11. Because I struggled a lot. What I used to do was I got a lot of books and I was confused at how much content is actually required for class 11. So I have made the work easier for you. I've made the notes and everything. So it will be really beneficial if you get it. Moving further, the next definition which we are required to do is stimulus. So what exactly is stimulus? A stimulus is an external or internal event or a situation that elicits a reaction from an organism. So let me give an example to you so that you get it right. So for example, a loud noise is an external stimulus that might trigger a startle response from a dog or a boy. So what exactly is a stimulus? What do we understand by it? That a stimulus causes a reaction. The thing that leads to that reaction is the stimulus. Next is response. So what exactly is a response? What do we understand by it? A response is a reaction or behavior that follows a stimulus. Basically, first comes the stimulus, and the second, in response to that, is the response. So I guess I made it really easy to remember. It can be an automatic reflex or a more complex behavior influenced by cognitive processes. What do we understand by this? That there are different kinds of responses. One is an automatic reflex, like a spinal reflex when you touch a candle and you immediately withdraw your hands. We have already done it in our earlier biology classes. That is a spinal reflex. Whereas if you say the startle response to a loud noise is a direct reaction, while deciding to move away from that instance or trying to avoid it in a future is a more complex cognitive process. So these are three terms which are explicitly mentioned in your syllabus. So make sure you do the definition. They can come as a 1 marker, as a 2 marker, or even very important, the psychology nowadays actually gives you the example, and by that example, you are required to identify the process or the term. Basically, you have to do a lot of examples. So in my notes, if you do get them, you get at least 5 to 6 real-time critical analysis examples for the simplest of the simplest terms. So if you want, I'll really recommend you get them. Moving on to our third topic, the eclectic approach of modern psychology. So what do we understand by eclectic approach? Modern psychology often adopts an eclectic approach, which means it integrates various theoretical perspectives to understand human behavior. This includes various type of approaches. The first one is biological approach, which focuses on the physiological and the genetic basis of behavior, such as brain structure and neurotransmitter functions. To make it easy for you, it is more like the biology or the chemistry classes of your class 10th, where you studied the human mind and everything. So this is more of the chemistry or the biological approach which is there. The second approach is the behavioral approach, which we are going to do ahead in our psychology as well, especially for your class 12 boards exams. Behavioral approach is really, really important. So, behavioral approach examines the observable behaviors and the ways they're learned through interactions with the environment, emphasizing conditioning processes. So, do not get panicked by the words conditioning and interactions and everything, because you just need to do the definitions in this chapter. Just understand the basics, because in our further chapters, which I'll be uploading very soon, we'll be like there will be chapters dedicated to each of these terms, like conditioning, classical, and everything. So, don't go into too depth. We just have to do this much. Further, moving on, psychoanalytic approach. So this approach highlights the influence of unconscious processes and early childhood experiences on behavior. It focuses on concepts like the id, ego, and superego. So for this as well, you just need to do the basic keywords. The rest you have pure entire chapters dedicated. So don't go into too depth. But yes, you do have to do the keywords, because you will be asked definitions and examples where you can be given a few keywords and asked to identify that what kind of an approach is used. Make sure you do the examples, because this year, the next year, and the coming years, the board focuses more on a critical understanding rather than just bookish definitions. So make sure you do that. It seems easy, but children do struggle a lot while doing this, the practical applications and everything. Okay, moving on to the cognitive approach. It investigates the internal mental processes like thinking, memory, and problem solving. It emphasizes how individuals perceive, process, and store information. Make sure you note the keywords down, or if you're getting the PDFs from me, you just have to highlight them, and it will be very easy for you to understand and learn everything. Socio-cultural approach. It considers how social and cultural factors such as norms, values, influence behavior, and mental processes are approached. So if you're a sociology student coming from the humanities stream, you'll be able to understand it in more depth, but you just have to do 2 to 3 keywords, which I just mentioned, or if you have the notes, you just have to do them and you're done. Okay, we'll be moving further on to the most important topic of this chapter, which are the schools of psychology. Trust me, if you're just doing the schools of psychology from the first chapter, you'll be easily able to score 80 to 90 if there's like a 100-mark paper on this chapter. Yeah, the schools of psychology are really important. Further, if you're like planning to opt psychology in future, or even for class 12, the schools of psychology are not going to leave you. So not just as a chapter for the sake of education, you will have to do this if you're planning to score good in 12th and everything. So make sure you actually do the basics really right, because I can understand class 11 is the class where most students do not pay attention, but trust me, it's about your career, it's about your life. If you only pay attention and gather a few good materials to study from, you're all set for your class 12, and your good marks are not gonna go anywhere. Okay, so enough of the topic. Let's get started. Structuralism. So again, a very, very important school of psychology. So before doing structuralism, a basic understanding of what are the schools of psychology. So basically, psychology encompasses various schools of thought. Each of these school offers unique perspectives on the human behavior and how psychology should be understood, and the various mental processes which comes with it. So of the first and a very important school of psychology is structuralism. So, structuralism was pioneered by William Wundt and Edward Titchener. Make sure you underline these people. Trust me, both of these people are not gonna leave your side if you're planning to do psychology. Trust me, trust me, trust me. Note these down, practice these daily. If you're getting the notes, highlight them in a yellow color. These people are not gonna leave your side. Next, structuralism focuses on breaking down mental processes into the most basic components like building blocks. It aims to understand the structure of the mind by analyzing conscious experiences. Conscious experiences underline this, very, very important. Building blocks, very, very, very important. What were the key concepts which the structuralists use? It emphasizes on introspection as a method to explore the structure of the consciousness. Now, what is introspection? Really important. The goal is to identify the basic elements of consciousness, such as sensation, images, and feelings. So, introspection was a very important method used by the structuralist in the structuralism school of psychology. So, in introspection, trained individuals report their conscious experiences in response to a stimuli. So, stimuli was something which we did just right now. Stimulus and external stimuli, which elicits a response. So, this method involves detailed observation and the description of one's internal experiences. So, make sure you do the definition of introspection really well. This is definitely gonna come in your exam. Okay, so what kind of influence did structuralism have on our modern psychology? Structuralism laid the groundwork for experimental psychology by introducing scientific methods to study the mind. It contributed to the development of psychology as an empirical science. One more thing which is really important, all these schools of psychology, especially structuralism, you can be asked to write a 7 to 8 mark question, high weightage alert. So a lot of students actually struggle while writing long question answers. Like, you don't really understand that how are you gonna score 7 to 8 marks from such a topic. So if you really need that help, get my notes. I have 10 to 12 marks written as it is answers in my notes. Just learn it, write it, understand it, and no one can question you, or you can be 100% sure that you're gonna score the required marks which are there. Okay, next is the criticism. So criticism is actually really important. The council wants you to do the criticism. Criticism can be asked for 1 to 2 marks, or even if you're attempting a 7 to 8 marker question, you are required to do the criticism. It is evenly gonna get you 1 to 2 marks very easily. So the criticism for structuralism was the reliance on introspection was criticized for its subjectivity and lack of reliability. Um, Critics argued that it was difficult to standardize and replicate introspective reports. So basically, what happened was introspection is a really inward experiences where one looks into their inner eye, explores oneself internally. So this is something which is really subjective and lacks reliability. So structuralism was not given a high weightage for using this method. Let's understand a very easy example. It may help you understand more. I have detailed case studies and examples for each of the schools in my PDF notes. Uh, So make sure you get them. So structuralists, like Tetchener, would ask participants to describe their sensory experiences while looking at an object. So for instance, let me try explaining it to you. If I were William Booth, so I would ask my trained professionals to describe what they felt after seeing a red apple. So the trained people which would actually say red, round, or smooth, maybe sweet, delicious. So all these things are included in their method of introspections, breaking down their visual or sensory experiences into basic elements. So that was all about structuralism. That is all which you need to do for this chapter. Don't worry, just read the notes and you're just all done. Moving on to the second school of psychology, trust me, this school of psychology is also really, really, really important. This school of psychology is known as functionalism. So, what exactly is functionalism? So, functionalism was founded by William James. It focuses on the purpose and the function of mental processes and the dedicated behavior. It examines how mental activities help individuals adapt to their environments. So, the key concepts which functionalism included were investigates how mental processes such as perception, memory, emotions help individuals adapt to their surroundings and solve problems. It emphasizes the role of consciousness in aiding adaptation and survival. So all the keywords which are mentioned, or if you get the notes, these keywords are really important. And a lot of the students ask me that like we are not getting marks even for writing the things. Trust me, the board is all about keywords. Even if you understand the concept really nicely, even if you mention the founders name, the theories and everything, if you are not using the keywords, please, you really have to understand it's high time that you're not going to be awarded marks by the council. They are rigidly given a sheet where all the keywords and everything are mentioned in their answer scripts. So if the students are not using them, the examiners cannot, or even if they wish, they cannot give you marks. Okay, moving on to the methods which the functionalism used, where it uses observational and practical approaches to understand how mental functions aid in adaptation. Functionalists study the practical applications of mental processes and the behaviors in real world settings. So, what kind of an influence did functionalism have on the modern psychology? Functionalism influenced the development of applied psychology and contributed to understanding how mental processes aid in adaptation and survival. It laid the foundation for later developments in educational and organizational psychology. So, if you are someone who wishes to study educational or organizational psychology, this school of psychology is not going to leave you. Make sure you do this in detail. These are the building blocks for your career, or even if you're just doing psychology for your board exams, make sure you do this really well. Okay, moving on. We're even required to do the criticism. The board wants you to do the criticism. I'm repeating it again. The criticism which functionalism faced was for being too broad and it lacked a rigorous scientific approach. Critics even argued that it did not provide a clear framework for studying specific mental processes. So I'll try to explain it with an example. So functionalists might study how memory helps individuals remember important information for survival. Let's say such as remembering the location of a food source or recognizing dangerous situations. So I actually tell my students to visualize the image of an early human, how the early humans, the gatherers and the hunters, they actually remembered the place where the particular fruit tree was, or maybe associating or realizing that how a mammoth or a lion can be dangerous and everything. So all this comes under functionalism. Behaviorism was actually initiated by John B. Watson and was later developed by P.F. Skinner. It focuses on observable behaviors rather than internal mental states. The key concepts which were included in behaviorism were that it emphasizes the study of observable behaviors and the role of environment. It is learned through interaction with the environment, and the environmental stimuli helps in shaping the behavior. Remember that we did the definition of stimuli. In result of the stimuli, a response is initiated. Key concepts include classical conditioning, which was introduced by Ivan Pavlov, the dog experiment, and operant conditioning by B.F. Skinner. So don't go into too depth of these topics because they have their individual chapters, which we'll be doing ahead. I'll try to upload the video very soon. So the methods which behaviorism used were that it utilizes the experimental methods to study behavior, such as controlled experiments with stimuli and responses. Behaviorists rely on empirical data to understand and predict behavior. So, the influence which behaviorism had on modern psychology was that it contributed to the development of techniques of behavior modification, and therapy. It has practical applications in areas such as education, therapy, and behavior management therapies. So, we are also required to do the criticism. The council actually wants you to do the criticism. I'll repeat again, it counts for 1 to 2 marks, really important. Behaviorism was criticized for ignoring internal mental processes and emotions. Critics even argued that it provided an incomplete understanding of human behavior by focusing solely on the observable actions rather than the internal mental processes. Remember that when we did the definition of psychology in the first slide, I told you that as psychology students, you should remember that psychology is not just about the observable or which you can see. It is even more, or it is a combination of not just the behavior but also the internal mental processes. So I'll also give you an example so that you're able to relate to it. Behaviorists like Skinner conducted experiments with pigeons, training them to peck at buttons to receive food rewards. Basically, this demonstrated how behavior can be shaped through reinforcement. Reinforcement is a new word for you. Just understand that reinforcement is a punishment or reward. We'll be doing it in a lot of depth in the further chapters. Just understand the basic. Moving on to the next school of psychology, trust me, this is a very, very important school of psychology. If you're planning to do psychology in depth future, this person, Sigmund Freud, is not going to leave your side, although it is a matter of debate among people whether you love or hate this guy. But trust me, this guy is not going to leave your side if you're planning to do psychology. So, psychoanalysis was founded by Sigmund Freud. It delves into the intricate layers of the human mind, particularly the unconscious, which basically harbors thoughts and other desires and memories which are not readily accessible to our conscious awareness. Freud's model compares the mind to an iceberg, where the conscious mind, which is above the surface, represents our current thoughts and awareness. The subconscious, which is just below the surface, holds the memories and the information not currently in use but easily accessible. The unconscious mind, which is the largest part deep below the surface, stores the repressed memories, desires, and thoughts, often of a disturbing or socially unacceptable nature. We have further the unconscious desires and repressions, which includes the sexual desires, embarrassing moments. So all these are actually very in-depth topics such as id, ego, superego. I'll just give a very brief information such that the mind has been structured into 3 parts. Id, which is driven by primary desires and it works on the pleasure principle. Ego, which mediates between the id and the reality. Superego, which is focused on moral standards and ideals. So there were also some techniques which Freud used. So if this comes for a 7 to 8 marker, make sure you mention all the keywords, but in-depth analysis we'll be doing in the further chapters. If you are using the notes or the PDFs, just underline the basic elements. They are very in detail. So just use them. Even if you're just doing the keywords from the PPT which has been shown, the keywords are good enough. But the in-detail notes actually give you a deeper understanding, and very important, the criticism and the examples. So if you would like that, do ask for them. So we're also required to do the criticism. Psychoanalysis has faced criticism for its emphasis on sexual and aggressive instincts and the primary drivers of behavior. So critics argued and believed that Sigmund Freud was really negative about the human behavior and psychology. So additionally, the time-intensive nature of psychoanalytic theory has made it less practical in modern clinical settings. So a popular example, which will help you relate to it, and Freud might interpret a patient's recurring dreams of falling in dreams as symbolic of their unconscious fear of failure or loss of control. This is actually something which a lot of you can relate. The act of falling could actually represent the repressed anxieties about maybe not meeting societal or personal standards, living up to your expectations, or even deep rooted anxieties within the unconscious mind. Next, we have the Gestalt Psychology. Again, a really important school of psychology. So Gestalt psychology actually focuses on understanding the mind and the behavior as a whole rather than breaking it down into individual components like in structuralism. It is actually the opposite. It emphasizes how people perceive and organize sensory information. Really important. A keyword, if you're using the notes, highlight it, or if you're using the PPT, do note it down. Sensory information into meaningful words, WHOLES words. Key concepts which Gestalt psychology used were the principles included the ideas of figure ground perception, proximity, uh, similarity, and closure. These principles actually explained how individuals perceive complex scenes and objects as organized patterns rather than disjointed elements. Some prominent figures in the Gestalt psychology were Max Wertheimer, Wolfgang Kohler, and Kurt Kafka. These are key figures in Gestalt psychology. Wertheimer is known for his work on perceptual organization, while Kohler and Kafka contributed to understanding how people perceive patterns and structures. Certain applications. Gestalt psychology has influenced fields such as visual perception, design, and problem solving, providing insights into how people organize and interpret visual and spatial information. For your better understanding, a very nice example which all of you can relate is when looking at a table. Gestalt psychology suggests that we perceive the table as a whole rather than just a collection of its parts. What I mean to say is that you don't label its legs, its surface, or its screws differently. You just say it as a collective item, as a table. This is the holistic perception which helps us understand and interact with the environment more effectively. One thing which I would like to mark is you are required to use the examples, because a lot of times, even if you get the definitions wrong, or if your questions lack content, examples can actually award you a lot of marks. So examples are really important, and even from in the coming 3-4 years, you'll be actually required to identify things by the examples you use. So really important. Moving on to the next school of psychology. So this is a school of psychology which I actually tell my students that you can just do it from the surface. Don't go into too much detail. I'll not say it is like just completely leave it, but the other schools carry more weightage. It has a lower weightage, and you can actually assume it as less important. But do not ignore it. Definition and the focus. So cognitive psychology investigates the internal mental processes such as perception, memory, problem solving, and decision making. It focuses on basically understanding how people acquire, process, or store information. Key concepts in cognitive psychology include the cognitive schemas, which are the mental structures that basically organize knowledge, information processing, basically how we encode, store, or retrieve information, and of course cognitive biases, which we'll be doing in very much detail further. These are the systematic errors in thinking. It explores how these processes influence behavior and decision making. So the prominent figures in cognitive psychology were Jane Piaget, a really important person in your coming chapters, especially in class 12 psychology. This person is going to haunt your dreams, mark my words. So Jean Piaget is known for his theory of cognitive development, which outlines how children's thinking evolves through different stages. This was just for an explanation. The detail will be done in your class 12. So for application part, cognitive psychology has applications in areas such as cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, again a very important topic for your class 12, but you just need to do the on-surface part for this one. If you're doing the notes, just underline the important keywords and you're just all set. Moving on, I'll just share an example so that you're able to relate. So consider a student preparing for exams. So cognitive psychology would examine how the student organizes study materials, maybe retrieve the information or manage exam related stress. Techniques such as mnemonic devices, really important, a good keyword which you can use, gonna award you marks, and active recall are used to improve memory and cognitive performance. So we are done with the schools of psychology. The last and the final topic for today's video is psychology and other disciplines. Let's talk about psychology and other disciplines. So this is more of an easy topic, but you are expected to give an introduction and even use keywords, and especially do give an example. If you do not give an example, you are gonna lose marks. If you are using the notes, underline them, learn them, practice writing them. If you are just attending the session, note the example down in your notes, and you're all set. So first of all is economics, understanding consumer behavior. Psychology helps economists understand how consumers make purchasing decisions, which are influenced by factors such as emotions, biases, social influences. For example, in a marketing campaign, psychological principles such as scarcity or social proof are used to drive consumer interest and increase sales. So if you're an economics student, you would actually relate to it more. Moving on, political science. So in political science, psychology is used to measure voter behavior analysis. Political psychology studies how psychological factors influence political options, voting behavior, policy preferences. This includes understanding the impact of emotions or maybe identity or propaganda. An example can be campaigns often use psychological tactics such as appealing to voters' emotions or maybe using fear-based messaging to sway public opinion or win votes by the politicians. Next is law and criminology, understanding criminal behavior. Psychology aids in profiling criminals, understanding motives, and assessing mental state during criminal activities. So, if you're a law or a legal studying student, you will be able to relate a lot because psychology helps us to understand the intention or the motive behind different crimes. An example can be profilers use psychological theories to predict the behavior of serial offenders, helping law enforcement narrow down the suspects. Then is sociology. In sociology, we use social behavior analysis. Psychology and sociology together explore how individual behavior is influenced by social structures, groups, or cultural norms. This includes studying how social interactions shape identity and behavior. An example can be sociologists might use psychological theories to examine how maybe peer pressure affects adolescent behavior, decision making, and like child or teen behavior. Then is computer science, human-computer interaction. Psychology informs the design user interfaces and systems by understanding how people interact with technology. Artificial intelligence, a really debatable and a highlighted issue in today's times. Psychologists help design innovation software interfaces by studying user behavior and preferences to enhance usability. Make sure all the keywords which I'm talking about, you use this in your answers because the board requires you to use keywords, otherwise you'll lose marks. Okay, moving on, mass communication, mass media analysis. Psychology examines how media affects public perception, behavior, and attitudes. This includes studying the impact of news, advertisements, and social media on mental and emotional stress. Um, Example can be media psychologists might research how exposure to violent content affects viewers' aggression levels and mental health. The last topic is music and fine arts. The emotional impact of art. Psychology explores how engagement with music can help influence emotions, cognition, and behavior. Art therapy uses these principles to promote emotional and psychological well-being. An example can be music therapy, of course. Psychological techniques help patients express their inner emotions. Trauma patients actually use this a lot. They help to improve mental health through therapeutic music sessions. So that is all for this session. Make sure you see the video for part 2 and part 3. It will be coming very soon. So thank you for watching, and I hope you found this video helpful and inspiring. Make sure you like, subscribe, and stay tuned for other videos. See you in the next video. Bye bye.